let's see, my pronouns are she and her. And we are so glad to have the opportunity to have online service while we need to stay apart for each other's safety during this time. We look forward to the time when we can get together in person. This service is recorded and later put on YouTube. The service comes together with many people being part of it, including Reverend John Cooper, who will be speaking to us today.
Let us worship. It's time for The Road by David Lane.
Sorry.
Tina, we're not getting sound on my end.
You know what lies calling me. I need the road.
I'm sorry. Were you hearing it there at the end?
Yeah, we heard it just there at the end. Why don't we start this song over?
Okay.
Thank you.
I need the road. I need the road to calm my mind. Ain't nothing here but drinking beer and kissing time. I'm tired of knots. You know what lies calling me. I need the road. I need the road to set me free. Oh, the sun can make my left arm as it sails against the wind, and the rocket ride the wheel, and you can get that map a spin. Now the road is pulling out the cables, buried in my soul, and there ain't a way around it. Gotta pack my bag and go. Calling out my name, the time is now. Before my days all look the same, I see the signs. Though my eyes are failing me, my body cries. Take a chance and be carefree. I've settled and I've made it home. The dust is piled up thick. The fever grows within my bones, and my mind is playing tricks. Oh yeah. Well, the sun can take my left arm as it sails against the wind. My racket rides the wheel, and you can give that map a spin. Now the road is pulling out the cables, the bed in my soul. There ain't a way around it, gotta pack my bag and go.
Wow, David. Woo! Amazing.
Hello, hello. Is that
So we
David?
would like to extend kudos to David. We would like to extend an especially warm welcome to those who are here for the first time. So glad you're here. Our greeter is dropping in our connection card into the chat box. If you would like to join in that way, fill that out, reach out to our minister, etc. We are a caring and supportive community, And we have a pastoral care committee that wants to be there for each other. If there's something you would like from that committee or from Reverend Laura, the pastoral care card is also being dropped in the chat box now. Our online services are intergenerational. We do have a religious education and exploration program whose director, Rebecca Britt, is happy to hear from you. DRE email is also being dropped in the chat box now. There is a lot happening at South Valley, and the Happenings Weekly newsletter is a concise, up-to-date way to find out just what's going on. If you don't already receive that and would like to, Lori Quigley's email is now in the chat box. And Lori, thank you so much for doing that newsletter along with a crew of folks, Tammy Felt and others who do that for us every week. We're also active on Facebook, and we have an event calendar on our website. Only announcement is to remember it's stewardship time. We're in the midst of our annual pledge drive, and I believe I saw a note from Scott Renshaw, who's heading that up for this year, that yesterday he said we were up to 68%, I think it was, of what we're aiming for the drive, and that's fabulous. Thank you to all who've already pledged, and thank you to those who are going to fill those cards out in Breeze very soon. Thank you, everyone. Makes it possible for us to live and grow as a community. We're now going to take a moment to share the work of community. So we'll say hello to each other, and then we'll say the chalice lighting words. As all of us unmuted, it'll sound a little chaotic, but it's fun. So feel free to put gallery view on, unmute yourselves. Let's say hi.
Morning, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi,
Good
Casey.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So good to see everyone.
Good
morning.
Nice to see you, Brenda.
From the Avenue.
Yeah. Hi, John and Kate. Hey, Mom.
Is that Casey?
Hi, John.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, Saturn.
John's mom. All right. Oh, wonderful. Okay, everyone, and let us light our chalice if you have one at home or a candle. I'll say these chalice lighting words together again, kind of chaotically, but the way we get to hear each other's voices. We light this chalice
For the warmth
Warmth
of
of
love,
love,
for the light of
The light
through,
of time.
and for
and
the
for the
energy of
energy of
action.
action.
of action.
Thank you.
All right, so good morning. I'm Elena Hendricks, and I am a member of the Board of Trustees here at South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. My pronouns are she and her. Come, come, whoever you are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter your gender, whom you love, how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. You are welcome here, whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes, you are welcome here. No matter what you have experienced in the past, no matter what awaits you in the future, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God all of the time, or some of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. This is a community of open minds, loving hearts, and willing hands. You are welcome here at South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society.
Good morning. Well, welcome, South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. I'm Reverend John Cooper. I'm an Association of Professional Chaplains, board certified hospital chaplain, and my professional ministries at Huntsman Cancer Hospital at the University of Utah. A ministry that this congregation formally recognizes, and making me an affiliate minister here. Sometimes it's my honor to get to share reflections from that ministry in this pulpit. And this morning, I'd like to just again say thank you very much to everyone. Worship is a collaborative effort. It is not a solo endeavor. And much gratitude to all those who have helped be here and host this morning, and especially Elena and Tina, who stepped in last minute. So it was a year ago, March 2020, that our first messages about COVID-19 were shared throughout this community. I went back in preparation for today's sermon to read some of them. And I read Reverend Karen Madrone's, our interim minister at the time, first sentence to this community about COVID-19, sent March 9th, 2020. In times of stress and uncertainty, we always turn to one another for wisdom and support. We are inextricably bound in a beloved community of care. Regarding the coronavirus, days ahead may challenge us to find new ways to show our care and commitment to each other as we move through this time. If they do, we will be ready to respond. And reading that email again, I wanted to share this morning in our opening words that I wept. I wept because of what everyone in this community has had to endure. I wept because of how beautiful and glorious you have all been this year. I wept because of the love and grace that still shines through Zoom every Sunday. And I wept because this community did exactly as Reverend Karen Madrone called us to do. Today's worship is about commitment. And while we explore meaning together around that idea, recognize that a year ago, we made a commitment together to make this community work in COVID-19, no matter what happened around us. And you have all done that beautifully. It's almost like we don't need a sermon at all. Let's just go home, right? Because you all already understand, but let's do this anyway, right? Let us worship together again today as one in our shared realm of sacred digital space, committed to being together safely, respectfully, and lovingly, however we are able. Let us worship. And we have our gathering hymn here this morning. Please sing along as you're willing or able.
Hey everyone, we are going to have a story, so gather around. This is a short story about extraordinary strength during growth. It is adapted from a story written by Pedro Pablo Sacristan, a father from Madrid, Spain, for his own child. This is the story of the seed and the monkeys. Once upon a time, there were 4 seeds who were good friends and set out on the winds together. Taken up and far by the wind, they drifted finally landing in a jungle clearing. There they remained, hidden on the ground, hoping they would be able to grow up and become beautiful trees together. When the first seed began germinating, they realized it wouldn't be such an easy task. In the clearing, there lived a group of monkeys. And the smallest monkeys amused themselves by throwing bananas at any plant they noticed starting to grow. Using this game, the monkeys learned how to throw bananas and keep their clearing free of vegetation. They threw so many bananas at the first seed that it was almost split in two. When it told the other seeds what happened, they all agreed it would be better to wait for that group of monkeys to move on before attempting to grow. Well, maybe they all agreed, but there was one who thought maybe she ought to at least try it. When she did, she was pelted with bananas and folded over in two. The other seeds asked her to stop trying, but that little seed was completely determined to become a tree. And time again, she would try and try. On each new occasion, the little monkeys had slightly improved their aim, and so the little seed ended up doubled over again and again. The seed didn't give up. Every time they pelted her with bananas, she tried even harder, despite her friends begging her to stop and telling her to wait until the monkeys left. Days turned into weeks and then months, and the little plant was hit by bananas and kept ending up stooped and doubled over. For a few days, she managed to avoid the bananas, but the next day, some monkey would hit her and it would start all over again. Then one day, to her surprise, she didn't double over. Yeah, she got hit by a banana, then another, as usual, but none of them managed to make her stoop. She had been hit by so many bananas, been doubled over so many times that she was full of hard knots and scars that helped her grow more strongly than the other seeds. Her slim trunk had grown thicker and more resistant until it could withstand the impact of a banana. She discovered she was already so well developed that the bananas couldn't uproot her from the ground or make her double over anymore. There she stayed, growing, growing, and growing. Thanks to the extraordinary strength of her trunk, she could continue overcoming all difficulties until she became the most majestic tree in the jungle. For a long time, her friends stayed hidden in the ground, hoping that those horrible monkeys would abandon the clearing, until the one seed showed them that those very same monkeys and their bananas could also strengthen the seeds' trunks, something that might just prepare the seeds for all the other problems they might confront during their growth. The end.
Sutton, thank you. Did you create that story, Sutton? Did you do some of the drawings?
I only did the very last one. The others were some other people's artwork. And the story is from freestoriesforkids.com. So there you go.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. This community, our church, and its many ministries are only made possible by the gifts that you give of your time and your talent and your treasure. Many of you pledge monthly and have turned in those pledges for next year already. We are grateful. The gifts help ensure we're able to live our values of love and justice in the world outside. Part of our ministry at South Valley includes sharing our Sunday worship offerings with another charitable organization that aligns with our principles and values. And for March and April, we've selected Tree Utah. They've been around since 1988. They've planted nearly 400,000 trees across the state during that time, done lots of education around the importance of trees and our environment. And our collections will specifically help re-tree Salt Lake City, which is being implemented because of all the trees that were lost in public spaces during September 2020 and the windstorms. So we will be helping create and plant new trees in the Salt Lake City area. And I see that some of our South Valley members have been part of planting those trees. Thank you, Laura Renshaw. So let's say the words together. You'll be muted, but let's say these offertory words that are in our chat box. We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share the wealth of this community and sustain ourselves within it with our gifts. The lyrics to David's song are in the chat box if you want to follow along.
I had a piece of truth when I was young, but I walked around in circles till my secret didn't matter. Slow tide came creeping in and washed away the tracks I might have followed back to somewhere I remember. Now again, a lesson I'd forgotten, same damn touchstone in my life, and always knew each time around. Lord, when the day is done, are their struggles won? I pray the ache of morning fades to pride that I have gained some ground. Oh, there ain't no other way to get where this train's going. Don't need a damn thing from yesterday. Those tracks were laid by other hands, so you buy your ticket to the promised land, and the engine rumbles and you lull to sleep. There are miles to go and your troubles will keep. My days are dreamed in chambers of the heart, not free to dance and love and taste and be. Pray not for comfort or for solace deep, but pray for the peace of wizened men who live beyond what eyes can see. And hold on fast to dreams with all your might, 'cause love's a golden winged bird who dares not own the wondrous height. And fear not your fall from grace, but never having touched the clouds or cried for loss or given chase. Oh, there ain't no other other way to get where this train's going. Don't need a damn thing from yesterday. Those tracks were laid by other hands, so you buy your ticket to the promised land, and the engine rumbles and you love to sleep. There are miles to go and your troubles will keep. Oh, there ain't no other way to get where this train's going. Don't need a damn thing from yesterday. Those tracks were laid by other hands, so you buy your ticket to the promised land, and the engine rumbles and you love to sleep. There are miles to go and your troubles will keep.
Thank you. And for all we have received and all we have found the courage to give, may we be truly thankful. May these gifts be a blessing to South Valley and to Tree, Utah. May it be so. At this time, we are invited to share personal joys and sorrows with our community using our chat box. As you share, I will call out your name and offering, what you've shared, and Sutton will add a stone to the water bowl as a single symbol of our collective care and support. At the close of our ritual, we'll add one final stone to the water. Holy Spirit, source of life, of all things, creation itself, you that we know by so many different faces, hear the many joys, concerns, and loves and fears and dreams of your people. As you weave and fold the pathways of our lives, help us to hold them well. And I believe we have a sharing of the South Valley story.
Hi, my name is Melissa Venable, and I've been a member of South Valley since January of 2020. So that was just a little over a year ago, shortly before we shut down with COVID. So I consider myself new to South Valley, and also I'm new to Unitarian Universalism. But I felt very welcome in person and also on Zoom by the congregation. I thank you for that. I started visiting South Valley in the summer of 2019 when my husband, Russ, and I moved back to Salt Lake from Springfield, Missouri. We have been married for 30 years and I have two children who are 23 and 24. We left them in Missouri finishing college. But we have our fingers crossed that they might move out here one day. My husband, he has taken a break from church. He's visited at South Valley a few times and he thinks it's okay. He's just not too interested in organized religion at this time, which I've been there, so I'm very sympathetic. When I did move here, I tried several progressive churches in the area, and I kept coming back to South Valley. Intermittently at first and then like more often, and then I was like, this is just where I need to be. So that's how I came here. A little bit about my religious background. My father's side of the family is LDS, and while I have never been Mormon, I am familiar with the teachings of the church and Utah Mormon culture. And then my mom's side of the family has roots with First Baptist Church downtown Salt Lake. My grandmother was secretary there for 28 years. My parents were married there in the non-denominational chapel. And, we've celebrated weddings, funerals, all that kind of. I was dedicated there and baptized there as well. So good ties. But I've been in church like pretty much my whole life. In addition to being Baptist, I've attended United Methodist churches, Congregational, Lutheran churches, United Church of Christ, Presbyterian, and non-denominational churches. So on that side of the spectrum, I'm well versed. But growing up, my Sunday school experiences, we studied world religions, and in my home, there wasn't, the message wasn't that there was just one way to God or one way to practice spirituality. You know, so I grew up with the ability to question my faith and question how other people worshiped and why. And so was very open in my background. And, you know, but one thing within the denominations that I practiced in, there was also this tension where who could be included in worship and in the church and in what manner, right? There were levels. You couldn't participate fully if you were gay or lesbian. And LGBTQ, when I was growing up, you know, that wasn't the full range. We were just talking gay and lesbian when I was growing up. And so that came later though. So the congregations I participated in were very progressive and welcoming, but the denomination was not. So when I came here, I had left the church. I had left church participation at all in Missouri because I couldn't find any place I fit. So I came to Utah like, okay, I miss the community, I miss the fellowship, I miss political action and social justice within a congregation. And so like, I'm gonna try again. And I think I found that in South Valley. And also just the caring community. You guys have always been welcoming and kind. So the last thing I want to say is it's very important to me to be a member of the congregation because to me that tells you that I'm making a commitment to you with my time, my talents, my gifts, if I have any gifts you like, but just kidding. But also I want the church to be there when we get out of COVID and can meet in person, because I want to serve with you and I want to worship with you. And so that's how I got here, and that's why I plan to stay. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Whew. I want to say a special thank you to Brenda Voisart just as we begin here. It's been delightful putting a service together with you, Brenda. Thank you. A few summers ago, I walked out onto the Huntsman patio looking for the couple that had asked to see me. I'd visited with him many times during his treatment, and he'd shared with me about their adult kids, his love of Moab and the southern Utah desert. I met her after a few visits, and she talked of all the things they had done and still hope to do there in Moab. They had retired to Moab to have the time to really love and enjoy the southern Utah desert. But today they said they had something important they wanted to talk with me about. And once I found them outside and sat with them, shared greetings, they got to the point pretty quickly. Chaplain, how do we keep going? Chaplain, how do we keep going in cancer treatment when the chemo took his kidneys and we hate dialysis? How do we keep going, Chaplain, when a medication reaction caused neuropathy in his legs and he needs a walker now? And we think hiking in Moab is forever off the table. How do we keep going, Chaplain, when we're so tired of this? We have dreams about being able to rest, and we regret waking up for more. And how do we keep going, Chaplain, when just today they told us the cancer didn't respond again? And so next up is yet another new treatment with new side effects to discover and experience. Chaplain, how do we keep going? When they finished sharing all the obstacles in front of them with me, we sat quietly for a few moments, and I searched for a thoughtful answer. And out of that silence, as silence sometimes does, the chaplain heard his voice say, "Did you want to keep going?" They both looked at me surprised. Honestly, I was a little surprised. I was still thinking and hadn't really expected to speak, but I heard myself talk. He said, "Isn't it the thing to do?" And she said, we have a choice. And I said, "Well, who is it who said you need to keep going?" And they looked at each other for a moment, and he said, "Didn't the doctor say?" Well, she replied, no, they didn't. They seemed to assume. And she said, So did the kids say? And he said, no, they didn't. They said they love us and want us to do what's best. And we sat there in the silence for a while, looking at each other, the three of us, while they seemed to try to figure out who said they had to keep going. And then I heard it, which is a sentence I hear in these conversations. The next words in that silence were, but we made a commitment. To whom? And what commitment did you make? They weren't sure. None of us were sure. They thought maybe the commitment was for their kids or for the doctors because it's what was expected, but looking at it, that wasn't really their commitment. And as we talked, I asked, were you committed to cancer treatment or to getting well again? And we spent a few hours exploring that conversation together out there on the patio. And sometimes I think we have to explore to figure out where we are. And as we wandered around in that conversation, we wandered around hills related to quality of life they were committed to having. And in that contrast, the commitment to treatment seemed somehow smaller. Together, we wondered what other commitments might be violated by changing course and what commitments might be upheld. And we talked for a couple hours on that patio, continuing to explore the nature of their commitments, the ones they made to each other, to their treatment, commitments to health and well-being, to doctors, to our hospital, to their adult children, to their friends, even to their church community. And we three explored and searched the crossroads of those many different commitments. We also thought about what they most loved and what had the most meaning. Desert pastels, the night sky, quiet moments on their patio together. We looked at what treatment had done to those moments together. And when the conversation wound down, I honestly didn't know what they would conclude, but I did know they had more options than they thought they had. And I knew that the word commitment had a much richer, deeper, and more complex meaning to them than it had when we started. And in our stories, the sacred texts of our lives, as in the Gospels of many faiths, complicated meaning can be the fertile soil for our souls. And I think it was the next day when I came in, there may have been a weekend between, I don't recall exactly, but it was the next time I was at my hospital that I saw they were gone. And it was when I sought out the nurse and talked with the nurse and looked at the chart, I discovered they'd gone home on hospice. They were on their patio in Moab already. And I called them to see what how the transition had gone for them. And they shared with me what they'd realized, and was that the commitment that they had most valued was the one to be with one another. And they told me they'd realized that cancer treatment had already interrupted that particular commitment. And that once they realized that, their decision pretty much made itself, which is what I was very grateful to hear. It's what I like to hear. I like to hear that we found enough meaning, enough understanding that any decision, the one they asked me to help them make, felt like it made itself. And I get to have a lot of conversations like this. In some of them, patients renew their commitment to treatment as part of their conversations. We often touch on the whys they pursued treatment. The nearly adult kids they want to see transition to adults. And it's often grandkids. Grandkids seem to exist to provide a whole lot of why. Sometimes it's an activity they love. With younger patients, it's often career goals, life goals, right? A desire to leave their mark on this world before they're gone. And I get to have a lot of conversations about why people are in cancer treatment. I may be the luckiest minister in the whole world. But cancer treatment, it requires commitment. Constant appointments, follow-up, monitoring. Cancer treatment often involves enduring discomfort and sometimes incredible discomfort, nausea, pain, sores in the mouth that make it hard to breathe and let alone swallow, exhaustion that leaves people staring at walls for days on end. And what people's bodies do under the combined pressure of cancer and the traumatic treatments we have to use to confront it can be so hard to endure. It's inconceivable to those of us who haven't done it. I should mention the diarrhea. I shouldn't skip the diarrhea, because I mean like constant, like unreal diarrhea. Like diarrhea is so bad, you really want to talk with your chaplain about it for a few hours, right? Let's just have a moment of respect for that one, because there's a lot more that I could say about cancer treatment that's not nearly as fun to joke about or talk about. And still, nobody who comes to us for cancer treatment knows what we've seen, those of us who work there. And very few patients understand just how challenging cancer treatment can be. Even many of those who have been through treatment before no longer remember the awful. Thankfully, many memories of suffering fade for us and get easier to carry with time. And there's also the reality that there's simply no solid predictability to cancer treatment. Even when we've known a patient, and even when they've been through treatment before, we don't necessarily know what this treatment will look like this time. Some folks who had a horrible time in treatment but made it through and then relapse mysteriously have like an easy time on their next round of treatment. Usually, the more courses of treatment a patient does, the worse their journey gets. But that's not even true all of the time. Since every one of us, well, we all may be built similar, but we have very different physical realities. We never know for sure what treatment will look like for a specific individual or a specific time. And what a metaphor for some things in life cancer treatment can be. Every treatment course is individual, and yet there's trends we can kind of predict. Probabilities we follow, but the very nature of likelihood means that someone sometime gets to be unlikely, which means sometimes they get to beat all the odds. And those are our favorite stories, right? The ones that leave our doctors scratching their heads going, I don't know what happened, and the chaplain grinning going, yeah, miracles do in fact happen sometimes, don't they? Those are our favorite unlikely stories, but they're not the only ones. And from a chaplain's perspective, I'm often reminded in my hospital of the story of Exodus. You know, the story where the Israelites finally got out of Egypt, finally got across the Red Sea and had a party. The prophetess Miriam played her tambourine and Moses sang. It was a good time. And then they turned from the banks and they looked out at what was next, at the desert ahead of them with no food, no shelter, no plan. One moment, Exodus 15:21, Miriam's all, sing praises to the Lord for his great victory. He's thrown the horses and their riders into the sea. And the very next time, Exodus 15:22 is literally, after the Israelites left the Red Sea, Moses led them through the Shur desert for 3 days before finding water. Can you imagine waking up from a party with like that morning dry mouth and then walking in a desert for 3 days before you find more water? And then by Exodus 16, just a few lines later, the Israelites, Moses, dude, we wish the Lord had killed us in Egypt. When we lived there, we could at least sit down and eat bread and meat. But you brought us here in the desert and we're going to starve. That sounds like cancer treatment to me. And then there's the whole manna in the bushes thing where the Israelites are like, hey, man, we're starving. Can we save this stuff for a day or two? And God's all, no, you can't. I'll put it there tomorrow. You got to trust me because I'm going to put it there every day for you, except for the Sabbath, because I don't work on the Sabbath. But that day you can say, so that day you can save it because I'm not going to put more there that day. But every other day, no, if you get scared and try and save the manna, it's going to rot on you. So you just trust me. Right. And now we're really talking cancer treatment. I'm going to put the manna there every day, but you can't count on it being there. It'll rot some days, but it won't rot on Sunday because maybe I won't put it there and you can't save it, but you just got to believe. That takes some real commitment to go into something like that. And, maybe commitment isn't as simple as it first seems. We talk about it a lot. We use the word like it defines itself. Unitarian Universalists are asked to commit to a few things here and there. The inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, compassion, and human relations, acceptance of one another, encourage to spiritual growth. I'm still going. More commitments. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience, use of democratic process in our congregations, goal of world community, peace, liberty, justice for all, respect for an interdependent web of all existence. We may be a gentle, loving people. We're also a gentle, loving people who ask a lot of each other. We're committed to social justice. We're committed to marriage equality. We're committed to racial equity. We've made a commitment even to defund the police, to doing anti-racism work. We're committed to slowing and hopefully stopping climate change. We are a people of many deep and important commitments, but in the spiritual trenches of my cancer hospital, commitment seems complicated. And I wonder, is it always complicated? When we commit to a cause, does that mean that we're willing to risk death for that cause? Because that's one level of commitment. I mean, one image that comes to my mind often when I hear the word commitment is the image of a Chinese citizen standing alone in front of a line of tanks. Because I was in high school or first year of college maybe, when Tiananmen Square happened. And that image is burned into my mind as an image of a young man's example of courage. Because courage sometimes being an important commitment to young men. And it was to me. And in those days, my understanding of commitment came from Kung Fu or Bushido. I remember reading a passage in Hagakure, which means the hidden leaves, by Yamamoto Tsunetomo. According to what the elders said, taking an enemy on the battlefield is like a hawk taking a bird. Even though it enters into the midst of 1,000 of them, it pays no attention to any bird other than the one it has first marked. And Yoda, the cute green little Jedi teacher, said to me as a hopeful young man-child, there is no try. Do or do not, there is no try. And I thought I knew everything I needed to know about commitment. I thought I learned everything I needed to know about commitment from a green holy man in a swamp on Dagobah. But is that a mature concept of commitment? Does it adapt to what we need? I'm not sure that model of commitment is sustainable. It sounds pretty good. It's a good fit for combat, for sure. It's a good fit for a foot race, a hike, even recovery from a hard surgery. But is it a good way to approach 11 years of cancer treatment? Or a whole year of a global pandemic? Is that the kind of commitment we need to create racial justice? I mean, if we could create racial justice by lifting an X-wing out of a swamp and flying it off to confront our dad whose day job is spreading fear and loathing, maybe the Jedi or samurai understanding of commitment would fit in that world. But I wonder what Yoda would have said if we got to ask him about sustainable commitment instead of how to lift the X-wing out of a swamp to chase our destiny. Ignoring every combatant, but your target works great if you're a samurai whose highest honor is to die in service to a cause. It sounds good if you're a Jedi who's destined to restore justice to the whole galaxy. But I have to wonder, as an older man now, more concerned about caring than courage, if those models of commitment are comprehensive enough for us, for the culture and world that we actually live in. It may be easy to see the evil of empire putting its mark on this world, but I don't see any Jedis destined to overturn that yet. And if you do happen to have an X-wing in the swamp in your backyard, I am very, very disappointed in you that you have not invited me over to see it yet. Call me. Right? I think this is what my cancer center has been showing me bit by bit, is that while commitment is a very central part of the story of our lives, and doctors are not wrong when they say you have to commit to a transplant to get through it. Our popular media, our dreams of heroism, our mythology, our Joseph Campbell, the tales that are highlighted that define our belief and our meaning, they didn't fill in all the blanks on this subject. Let's look at something a little more down to earth. In an article on Psychology Today about commitment, licensed clinical social worker Mel Schwartz writes that marriage is one of the places in our society where we name commitment. We say, I'm in a committed relationship, or I'm entirely committed to this relationship. And Mel writes, we take that for granted, that the word or the expression means the same thing for all of us. And Mel assures us that it does not. When we talk of commitment in relationships, it's a statement of purpose or intent. For example, I am committed to you suggests we're engaged in monogamy. Well, in our society, we tend to put deep, deep meaning on the commitment of a formal marriage. And yet we know that statistically, about 1 in 6 married people will stray from those commitments and have sex with someone other than their spouse. And we all know the divorce rate is incredibly high. Marriage is considered to be one of our most time-honored institutions of commitment. It's the traditional example of two people committing to each other. And so I guess a worldwide B to B plus grade in marriage doesn't seem all that bad, right? So our wise LCSW, Mel Schwartz, writes, the difficulty is that we're making promises about behaviors and outcomes, but we're ignoring the process necessary to achieve those goals. In relationships, the outcome I'm referring to is a notion like continued love, happiness, and fidelity. It's mindless to think that we might achieve such outcomes if we don't focus on the process required to reach those lofty goals. How do we hear people commit? How often do we hear people commit to the process of making a relationship work? For example, what might happen if we committed to working on and sustaining our levels of emotional intimacy and learning the necessary tools to support that process? And I find a really interesting point here, relevant to what I've observed in my cancer hospital. What if instead of committing to a specific outcome, we also committed to the values we want to uphold while we try to get there? What if instead of I will beat this cancer or I will survive my cancer, we also made a commitment to I will hold on to what I hold most dear in this cancer? And then we had to do the complicated work of finding the balance between those commitments. I honestly don't know. I've had the opportunity to visit with some patients whose commitments sound more like that, more like I'm committed to being with my family even through my cancer treatment. I've gotten to hear some like that. And 201, those patients look like they're coping with things with a little bit more grace. And so maybe our LCSW is onto something here. Mel Schwartz goes on to say, an outcome is but a momentary snapshot of life. In an instant, we take that snapshot and we call it an outcome. And in truth, it's just a moment extracted from the flow of our life experience. You can choose to look at the singular behavior or decision that we refer to as the outcome, or you can look at the life processes and whether you made a full commitment to that process. What we need to look at is the flow of our experience and the quality of how we're choosing to live. The outcome is simply the byproduct of that flow of process. And if we learn to commit fully to the process, then the outcomes will be what they should be and where they should be. But if we commit merely to the outcome and ignore the process, we've sabotaged both. Some of you have heard my sermons about outcomes when I get to talk about my C5-6 spinal column injury. And the biggest lesson that it taught me, which is that human beings don't control outcomes. We might think we do, but we do not. We control what we invest. We control the work we put in. We control the goals we set. We control our attitude, our approaches, the strategies we take. We even control our expectations or our hopes. We have so much control, but we do not get to control what eventually happens. And I guess maybe to me, outcome is mine, saith the Lord, might have been made for a more clear and authentic translation than judgment. And every time I hear a doctor say, you have to be committed to this or that treatment, I wonder if the patient and the doctor share the same definition of the word commitment. And ironically, that's the same sentence that I said to my own father when he was contemplating a lung transplant at 78. And the day after he was approved by the medical team for a transplant, he called to tell me, and I could tell Dad wasn't excited. He was pensive. After several months of tests and examinations and health checks, he finally got the outcome he was chasing through all of that, which was approval for a transplant, and he wasn't excited. And that gave me pause. You know, I asked him what it meant. And I remember I asked him, okay, Dad, so you can go do it, but do you wanna go do it? My own father responded that after everything, wasn't he supposed to go do it? I mean, that's what he said. What? I did all this, I'm supposed to, right? And I said, transplant is hard, Dad. Harder than anyone can explain to you ahead of time. So are you committed to making it through a transplant? Is that your commitment, or are you exploring? I know you like to explore, Dad, but I don't think the journey through lung transplant looks very fun to explore. And from everything I've seen, I think it's the kind of journey you take because you really, really want to get to the end. And my father and I talked at length about what I'd seen in my cancer hospital, what I'd seen in my bone marrow transplant area, and I held nothing back. Although I did ask out of respect if he wanted to hear about the diarrhea, bad enough that a lot of people want to talk to their chaplain about diarrhea before I described that to him. But a bit later, my father called me to tell me he'd written a letter explaining to his transplant team why he was going to choose hospice instead. My father wrote that he did not have the life energy to make a commitment to surviving a difficult lung transplant. So he felt at 78 years old deeply that the precious resource of a lung should go to someone younger who had more reasons why they would commit to everything a transplant might mean. And I was so very proud of him. Then to my fury, his transplant doctors shamed him for wasting their time on the tests and examinations, you know? I admit I nearly took a flight to Philadelphia, where my parents lived at the time, so that I could show the doctors what shaming from a chaplain looks like, or what real shaming might really look like. Thankfully, I didn't do that, but I guess my father had made one commitment, which was a commitment to find out if a transplant was for him. His doctors, they thought he'd made a different kind of commitment. My father and his doctors just never discussed what that word commitment meant to each of them, to see if they meant the same thing. I asked my fellow chaplain, Gerson Annunciasau, who's a Presbyterian pastor I deeply respect, what Christ has to say about commitment, because I get to share an office with this deeply reflective, deeply spiritual, deeply liberal Christian pastor. And Chaplain Gerson, who never ceases to amaze me with his wisdom, told me that a Christian's commitment is not to Christ, but to Christ's purpose of creating more justice, compassion, and love. My wise, gentle, caring colleague reminded me that our misunderstanding of commitment affects our Christian siblings as well, and our Christian theology in this world too. Many, many commit to the laws and the rules that Christ came to say love fulfills, rather than to the work of growing the love and building the kingdom that Christ describes. And I have one more thought for you this week from last week. As Justin Avery spoke to us last week, and he spoke to us about systemic racism, and he said something that haunted me and has been haunting me since last Sunday. He said one sentence that completely blew me away. He said, as a Black person, you hear opposition all your life on one front or another. And honestly, I missed the next 5 to 10 minutes of what he said. I had to go watch the recording because I couldn't stop thinking about the commitment to life that would require to get up every day and face a world that gives opposition, such opposition to your life that you find it on one front or another all of the time. And to have that be so normal that you casually come to say you hear opposition all your life on one front or another. Ouch. You know, from one battered, aging, broken, and disabled warrior turned chaplain, I want to pause here and offer just a nod of respect to every single one of you out there whose identity means you need a commitment worthy of a Jedi just to get up, to face all the opposition, to get on with your life. Ouch, and nod. And as I said in our opening words, I know this community has a deep understanding of commitment. I've gotten to watch you exemplify that understanding in the last year. I don't know if the reflections I've shared today have offered very much, right? I mean, look at where we are now. Look at the faces on Zoom, right? Look at the maintenance of hope and of joy, despite the circumstances around us. And so, gentle people, as you go forth today, right, my call to you is one of contemplation. Consider your commitments deeply. Look at their crossroads, their purpose. Maybe it is indeed time for you to lift an X-wing out of a swamp so you can run off to give up your hand confronting your father in the name of justice and friendship, right? Or maybe even with keeping your commitment to that justice, to being with each other during this pandemic, to spreading love and caring in this world, maybe there's some adjustments to the journey that are due. And whatever you find, may you live in balance with it. May it be so. Let us sing together our closing hymn while we're all muted, watching each other sing in the privacy of our own homes.
Colin, for mining these beautiful videos of us singing from past services. We will once again be in that space. We know this is true. In the meantime, it's wonderful to see and to hear and to sing along. Reverend John, your heart was definitely in a holy place this morning, and we have all been blessed. Thank you. Let's now extinguish our communal chalice. You can unmute yourselves if you like, and we will say the chalice extinguishing words together that David has now put in the chat box. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of community, the light of truth, or the energy of action. We hold each other in our hearts until we meet again.
We will have I believe we have social hour after this, after a 10-minute break, 10 or so. right?
Yes.
We have, yeah, when we have a postlude as well. So people, David Lane is going to bless us with more of his music for our postlude. And as you go out into the world today and into this week, and as you work to make this world a better place, all of you seeking to bring more grace, more justice, more equality, and more love. Gentle people, go in peace today with courage and with commitment. Oh, I guess I'm supposed to do that after David sings. We can do another blessing after David sings. David, we'll triple bless.
Well done. I would like to add my thanks to the people who have commented in the chat box. Your words today were beautiful, John. Thank you so much. And I would also like to thank all of you who sent me well wishes. I too had some stents put in my heart about 10 days ago. I'm feeling good now, but thank you. So I'm going to try a song that I've loved for a really long time, and hopefully I won't butcher it too bad. Of all the money that I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm that I've done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. Fill to me the parting glass, and drink to health whatever befalls. So gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be with you all. And all the comrades that e'er I had, they're sorry for my going away. And all the sweethearts that e'er I had, they wish me one more day to stay. But since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, so gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be with you all. So fill to me the parting glass, and drink to health whatever befalls. So gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be with you all. Thanks, everybody.
John, unmute.
Oh, it's the headset microphone. Thank you. There's not much to add to that. Thank you, David. May all of you find grace, peace, love, and joy and soul in the week to come. May it be so. See you back here in 10 minutes or so.